In our last React video, we set up our page to actually show the different components on the page. So in this video, we're actually going to get our interaction to work to be able to add and remove to-dos. So if we'll jump into our index.js file, which is our main file, and we'll simply start by going down to our main page. And in our main page component, we're going to add a function called getInitialState. Basically, this for a component sets up the initial state. State is where you actually will store information to access in the rest of your component. Think of it as kind of like the init of a class in Python, where you can set instance variables in there and store stuff on each instance of that class. That's similar to how getInitialState works with a React component. So we're just going to return a dictionary of to-dos, and it's just going to be empty for the moment. We'll come down here to remove to-dos, and since we're dealing with our state, we're going to do this.state.todos, and we're just going to set it to be an empty array. And then we're going to tell the system this.setState, pass it a dictionary to say, hey, for to-dos, set the state.todos. There's a bunch of reasoning behind doing it this specific way, which I recommend checking out other React resources for a full explanation. But this is basically the best way to set the state for to-dos. The next thing to do is we'll go down to our to-dos component that we've put into our main page component and pass it to-dos equals this.state.todos. This is going to pass to-dos, a property of to-dos, into the to-dos component, and it's going to pass the this.state.todos into that component so that it can iterate over it and display the to-dos. So we'll go up to our to-dos component. We have a render that we created last time, and instead of having this dictionary, we're just going to cut it and move it down to our main page where we're setting up the state for everything. We'll just paste it in. We'll go back up to our to-dos app, and we're going to set this.props because we passed in the to-dos into this component, so it's going to be on the props. We're going to use an ES6 feature. We'll do this.props, but we'll wrap to-dos in a curly brace so that it pulls out specifically the to-dos for us to use. Also realize that I put the to-dos in the remove instead of in the initialization of the getInit. So if we'll cut that and we'll move that up to the getInitialState, we have our main page. We have our to-dos in our state so that we can get and interact with data a little bit. We have our remove to-dos function that down below, as you notice, is passed to our remove to-dos component as remove to-dos. So that should work. And then we have to-dos, and then we're setting it so that it automatically displays all of our to-dos in our current state. If I'll go into our browser and refresh the page, you see we have hello world. If we do remove all to-dos, then it removes our to-dos. So with that in mind, the only thing we really have left to do is be able to add to-dos to our state. So go back to our index.js, go down to our main page and go to our add to-do function. We'll do this.state.todos.push, since to-dos is an array. And then we're going to push a new to-do item onto our array. We'll give it the text of text that we pass in our function call. And then we're going to set an ID, and we're just going to do math.random, so it just sets something. We want to have an ID because when we render out components that are the same components all in a list, then each one needs to have its own ID. So we have our add to do, and it's passing in that function of add to do. So if we go up to our add to do component, you see we already have our form that we created last time, has the handle submit function that we're using. So we're going to go ahead and see about creating that. Do handle submit, set the event, and we're going to do this.props.addToDo. This is calling the function that we just passed in. We're going to do some text for now. This is just going to add it, and we'll get back to it here in a second. We'll do event.preventDefault so it doesn't refresh the page. And then we also have to realize that whenever we start typing stuff, if we want to be able to pass it in, and we need to be able to store the value that's in our form input somewhere, we're going to go ahead and set an initial state for our add to do. So just do getInitialState. We're going to set just a simple dictionary, and it's just going to be to do and then some text. So from there, we'll go down to our text input in our form, and we'll do value equals this.state.todo. So we're setting the value of our form to the state that we have above. So anytime we modify that, we can go ahead and access it somewhere else. We'll do an onChange event so that every time we hit a button, it actually does something. And we'll do this.handleChange. So we'll go ahead and create that function as well. It sets this.setState to be to do. We'll set it to blank. So we're back up to our handle submit. Then we're going to do this.state.todo since it deals with the to do that we created earlier. And then we're going to do this.setState to do. And it's going to blank it out because what we've done is we've submitted our to do. It's added it to our main state. And then our set state here is going to blank out the form input for us. Then we need to go down to our add to do because we forgot to set the state down there. And then finally, we'll go back to our handle change function in our add to do, and we'll set event.target.value because it's the value of our form element. So it's going to constantly update the to do state in our state. So with that, we're ready to actually run it, but let me just give you a verbal quick rundown of what we did. We have our main page component. We set an initial state on there. After that, we added to our remove to-dos. We set these to-dos to blank. Then we told it to set the actual state to blank. We moved our pre-populated to-dos down to our initial state in our main page. So this way we have two functioning things. We have it automatically populating all of our to-dos, and then we have the ability to remove all the to-dos, and that just works. The next thing that we needed to do is we needed to handle adding a to-do. So we created our function of add to-do, and we were passed in text to be able to create a new to-do object to add to our states to-dos of the main page. Then we have that function that's passed into our add to-do component, and we're ready to actually start dealing with our form. At that point, we took our handle submit function that we had declared that we were going to use earlier on submit, and we created it, and we had it just call the add to dos function that we passed into the component. We then set our initial state so that we could set a to do for this form so that we could actually be able to go ahead and add that data somewhere, add the text from that input form, because in some cases you can run into, if you wire it up, then just nothing absolutely happens. So to manage that, we said, hey, we want this text input to be set to the state of the to-do object, and then on change we want to be able to just go ahead and constantly update that. And then as soon as we're done and we hit the submit button, then we send it off with the handle submit to be able to be added to our main state of our main component. And so it actually works, and it works fairly well. And if just kind of run through the code a little bit and you'll see. Let's go ahead and open it up in our browser. You can see we have our hello world, and you can see if we can just add one, we can do eat food, add to do. We can just add another one. And there we go. You can see we're actually adding it. We can remove all to-dos and it resets it. And that's it. That is the extent of what we needed to do for our basic to-do application. I recommend you give this code a look and kind of play with it a little bit, or at least look at it, because it's kind of easy to understand once you see the order in which things were done, to understand kind of how everything puts together. In the next video, we're going to start the process of converting this application from our internal state-based situation to using Redux to manage all of your states for all the different things. It's actually quite simple, but there's a few things to understand about it. And once you understand it, you can see there's a lot of power in it. So with that, I hope you have a great day and join us next time for the start of our Redux videos.